So, as the first rays of sunlight break over the horizon, a new chapter quietly unfolds in the heart of West Africa. Let's talk about Burkina Faso, a nation often overlooked, yet brimming with resilience and untold stories. Nestled in the Sahel, this landlocked country has long been shaped by the push and pull of outside forces, but its people have always harbored dreams of true independence. In the early 2020s, a young military captain named Ibrahim Traoré emerged as an unexpected leader. His rise was swift, his message uncompromising. Traoré's bold vision and charisma made the world take notice, and for many Burkinabe, he became a symbol of hope and change. He didn't just tweak policy, he challenged the entire post-colonial economic structure that had defined Burkina Faso for generations. Traoré spoke openly about the injustices of the past, calling for a complete break from systems that kept the nation dependent and impoverished. One of his government's most audacious moves was reclaiming 500,000 hectares of the nation's most fertile land, an area larger than Luxembourg. This was not just a policy decision, it was a statement of intent, a promise to return the land to those who worked it. For decades, this land had been controlled by foreign corporations, who used it to grow export crops like cotton and sugarcane. Meanwhile, local communities struggled with food insecurity, watching as their own resources were shipped abroad and profits vanished into distant bank accounts. Traoré's message was clear. True independence means owning your land, not just waving a flag. It means having the power to decide what to grow, how to feed your people, and how to shape your own destiny. He called out the economic system as colonialism in disguise, a system where profits flowed out of the country while poverty and hardship remained. Traoré argued that real freedom could only come when Burkinabe people controlled their own resources and wealth. Seizing the land was more than a policy. It was a declaration of war on that legacy. It was a direct challenge to the established order, a bold move that sent shockwaves through both local elites and foreign powers. For the Burkinabe, it was a moment of hope and pride, a chance to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. For foreign interests, it was seen as brazen defiance, a threat to the status quo that had benefited them for so long. But for Traoré, this was just the beginning. Meeting with rural leaders and listening to the dreams of young people, he saw the first step toward real self-determination. He knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but he believed that a new era was possible. The journey to transform Burkina Faso had begun, fueled by the hopes of its people and the promise of a future they would build for themselves. To truly grasp the magnitude of the revolution that would sweep across Burkina Faso, you must first understand the world that existed before it. The roots of change run deep, and they are tangled in a history marked by loss, struggle, and the relentless grip of outside powers. For decades, fewer than 50 foreign entities held sway over 500,000 hectares of the country's most fertile land, territory acquired through colonial-era deals, backroom negotiations, and agreements that rarely benefited the people who lived on it. On these vast plantations, millions of Burkinabe toiled as tenants or laborers. They worked the soil from dawn until dusk, growing cotton and other cash crops destined for export. Yet, while their labor fueled foreign profits, their own families often went hungry, unable to reap the rewards of their hard work. The land, once a source of pride and sustenance for generations, was transformed into a symbol of subjugation and dependency. Fences and boundaries replaced community and tradition, leaving many feeling like strangers in their own homeland. This system entrenched poverty, creating a permanent underclass with little hope of building wealth or securing a better future. Children grew up watching their parents struggle, inheriting not land or opportunity, but hardship and uncertainty. Even as the countryside was blanketed with crops, the government found itself forced to import food, rice, grains, and staples that could have been grown locally. The nation's hands were tied, its leaders powerless to break free from a cycle of dependency. Profits flowed out of the country, carried away in trucks and ships, while rural communities stagnated. Development was stunted, and hope seemed to fade with each passing season. It was a neo-colonial loop, an economic system designed for extraction, not for the growth or empowerment of the Burkinabe people. Foreign interests dictated the terms, and the legacy of colonialism lingered in every transaction. For leaders like Traoré, breaking this cycle was more than just an economic policy. It was a matter of national dignity and sovereignty. It was about reclaiming the right to decide the country's own destiny, to restore hope and pride to its people. The time for decisive change had come. The seeds of revolution were ready to be sown, and a new chapter in Burkina Faso's history was about to begin. For Traoré, land was the essence of freedom. If the land does not belong to the people, then sovereignty is only a flag, he declared. He reframed the land reclamation as historical justice, not theft. Who stole first? He asked, turning the Western narrative on its head. Food imports weren't just costly, they were a strategic risk. Achieving food sovereignty became a pillar of national security. By empowering Burkinabe farmers, the nation could withstand external shocks and reclaim dignity. Land ownership gave people a stake in their future, transforming them from laborers to agents of prosperity. Traoré aimed to replace powerlessness with pride and collective purpose. Reclaiming 500,000 hectares was a massive, disciplined operation. The government issued decrees, backed by legal teams, to reclaim land from foreign owners. Soldiers secured assets to ensure an orderly transition. No chaos, no turning back. The goal: empower people, not create state-run farms. Land was parceled out to families who had worked it for generations. Tenants became landowners overnight. Community cooperatives were formed, ensuring even the most vulnerable benefited. Women were given prominent roles, gaining economic power and a voice in decisions. This dual approach, individual and collective ownership, built a resilient, equitable system. The nation moved from modern serfdom to widespread democratic ownership. It was a transfer of wealth and power rarely seen. The government understood that simply giving land to people wasn't enough to spark real change. Land, while essential, is only the beginning of a much larger journey toward prosperity and food security. To truly empower its citizens, the government launched a bold national agricultural offensive, one that provided not just land deeds, but also the vital resources needed to make that land productive. Strategic grain reserves were released, ensuring that farmers had access to high-quality seeds for staple crops like millet, sorghum, and maize. These seeds were the foundation for a new era of food production. The focus shifted away from growing export cash crops for foreign markets. Instead, the priority became feeding the nation, making sure every family had enough to eat. Thousands of agricultural officers fanned out across the countryside, training farmers in sustainable, climate-resilient techniques. They blended modern scientific knowledge with the time-tested wisdom of local communities. Indigenous practices like zai pits and stone buns, which help conserve water and restore degraded soils, were revived and taught to a new generation of farmers. Recognizing that financial barriers often held people back, the state introduced microcredit funds. These offered low-interest loans, making it possible for even the poorest farmers to buy tools, seeds, and equipment. The support package was comprehensive: land, seeds, knowledge, and capital, designed to address every obstacle that stood in the way of success. The ultimate goal was self-sufficiency, not dependency. Families could work their own land, reap their own harvests, and take pride in their independence. The government invested in people's ability to build a better future, inspiring hope and ambition in communities that had long been overlooked. For many, it was more than just a policy. It was a genuine opportunity for transformation, a chance to restore dignity, and to create lasting change for generations to come. The results were swift and dramatic. Harvests surged as millions worked their own land, and food imports plummeted. The savings were reinvested in rural infrastructure, roads, silos, irrigation, creating jobs and boosting productivity. Local markets overflowed with Burkinabe-grown produce, stabilizing prices and improving lives. School feeding programs sourced food from local cooperatives, keeping money in communities. The government invested in small-scale agro-processing, rice mills, oil crushers, fruit plants, adding value and creating skilled jobs. Made in Burkina Faso became a source of pride. The country moved up the value chain, building an integrated economy. The transformation was visible everywhere, from fields to markets to factories. Burkina Faso was feeding itself and more. Land reform didn't just change the economy, it awakened the nation. Farmers became owners, not laborers, and political engagement soared. Women gained land and leadership, challenging old hierarchies and reshaping communities. National pride flourished. Artists, musicians, and poets celebrated the return of the soil. The reform became a symbol of dignity and self-reliance. Traoré's legitimacy was rooted in real, measurable change, not foreign approval. Rural communities demanded accountability and transparency from officials. The seeds of participatory democracy were sown. The people saw government as a partner, not a distant authority. Burkina Faso's soul was transformed. The world's reaction was split. The West condemned the reform as illegal, threatening sanctions and lawsuits. Traoré used the backlash to rally national support, asking, "Who stole first?" At home, his defiance became a source of unity. Across Africa, many admired Burkina Faso's boldness. Delegations came to learn from its model. Traoré built alliances with Mali and Niger, forming the sovereign Sahel bloc to boost regional self-reliance. The Burkinabe model became a blueprint for economic decolonization. Traoré emerged as a symbol of a new assertive Africa. By 2025, the land reform was the bedrock of Burkina Faso's identity. Traoré called the soil the nation's true constitution. Food self-sufficiency brought stability and slowed migration to cities. Agro-industry flourished, and made in Burkina Faso became common across the region. The country exported finished goods, captured more value, and created skilled jobs. The Burkinabe experiment inspired leaders across Africa to reclaim their economic destinies. The story was about more than land. It was about the courage to seize true sovereignty. Burkina Faso had planted the seeds of a new African renaissance.